Hi, folks. We're Lena and Philip, and we are going to talk a little bit about ritual today and how ritual can foster community, how it can enhance community, how ritual is something that anyone can create with anything around to bring a special intention and a special focus on life, on situations, on transitions. And we're going to have a few different chunks that we're going to talk about. One is just ritual in general, and then kind of walk you through towards crafting your own ritual for yourself and for your community. So that's us along the way. And maybe to start with, let's talk a bit about us.
So ritual has been a really important part of my life for many years. And even an entry point into my work as a facilitator, for example, I used to facilitate embodied rituals mainly for women's groups. And throughout the time, it has kind of supported me as an individual, and I've crafted and held so many, sometimes tiny, sometimes big rituals. And at the same time, together and alone, we have also experienced how ritual can really add just so much to community experiences.
And maybe for me, when I think about ritual, I think about the communal experiences, I think about my spiritual practice, but I also think about professional contexts where a lot of rituals are actually taking place, sometimes not even aware of that it is a ritual that happens. We said we facilitate together, we create, we craft experiences, and ritual is a big part of how I live everyday life and how I live the co-creation with you and also with others. And maybe let's start with defining what we actually mean when we talk about ritual. And just putting this in context, we're talking from our own experience, from our lived experience, from the spaces that we created and that we have been in. Other people might have different perspectives, and also treat all of the things that we talk about as an invitation. Like there's no prescribed way of doing it. And that's actually, when I think about the definition of ritual, is there's no dogma. It's also not tied to a specific religion, but there are religions that have rituals in them, but a ritual itself is not necessarily something religious. And we strongly believe that this is something that anybody and everybody can create. And to give a little bit more example about going into a ritual space, let's take a real life event that we want to compare, a mundane way of doing something, and if you ritualize it or if you put it into a ritualistic context. And the example we wanted to bring is lighting a candle. Right? So if you light a candle, very practically, you might just light it to get light in the evening, or maybe you have a dinner and you're lighting a candle just to have a beautiful atmosphere on the table. And that in itself is beautiful, but it's not necessarily a ritual. If you look at lighting a candle from a ritualistic perspective, you could light a candle, for example, with the intention to remember somebody who passed away. Right? You can really approach lighting the candle in the first place of thinking about them, calling them in, the person who passed away. And then as you light the candle, you are creating a space where you might be remembering this person. Maybe you speak to yourself or to people around you some stories that you had about this person. And while the light is burning, you could call in the light of them, right, of the person that is still with all of us and all of the people who are involved. And then at the end, you're going to blow out the candle, maybe closing the space, or maybe you're going to let it burn down, signifying that everything has an end, right, naturally. So just taking this as two candles that are being lit, one beautiful, the other one really with an intention and a focus that you bring to the act. And there's two major things that we define when we look at rituals. Is one, it is that you bring an intention, that you have a reason why you're doing what you're doing, and you're bringing also awareness to the space that you're creating. And somebody is facilitating this. So it could be one person doing it for themselves or facilitating this for a group. And the other piece I want to point to is that it's also time-bound. A ritual has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And really, it can be full circle, or it can be an arc of a ritual that you could follow.
Yeah, but I think it's important to recognize how it's also different from just an intention. Because I can have an intention to, for example, continue to become aware of my breath throughout the day. And that's not a ritual. It's a practice or it's an intention. But because it doesn't have this time-bound nature, there is not the same kind of creating of a container. And now that we heard of what we mean when we talk about ritual, the next key point is, why is ritual important for community building? And of course, in the first place, ritual can support individuals in their processing, in their transformation, and with their emotions. So by kind of, nurturing individuals, of course, that serves the community. But throughout this, we're mostly going to focus on rituals that are held within and as a group. And there, you kind of have three major impacts that ritual has. And the first one is that ritual contributes often very strongly to creating a healthy and strong web of relationships. And it does this because first of all, it creates a sense of belonging. And that is because we are in a shared experience when we're in ritual. And not just an everyday experience, but a sacred experience in a way, an intentional experience. And often, especially if it's as part of a community, there might also be a piece of exclusivity. So I know that I belong to this group because we do these rituals together, and it might be rituals that we only do as this group, And then I think simply through having these shared experiences, there is kind of naturally a deeper sense of intimacy and connection between the people. And then, kind of on the other side, ritual can also help a group in their clearing and processing. So there is a reason why, especially co-living groups, have very regular, often weekly, sometimes daily practices, such as sharing circles, forum, way of counsel. And in our definitions, those are rituals. They're not just processes. They have a ritualistic aspects because they mark these they check these two boxes that we introduced in the definition. And if you don't have these practices, community can get very messy. So having these, especially in a rhythmic way, can be super supportive. Lastly, also because through having this kind of predictability that certain things will just happen, there is often also a sense of safety that is being created, because I can kind of rest into the knowing that there is a time and a space where I can bring my feelings, I can share what's alive, any tensions can be processed. So that's the first big point, like a healthy, strong web of relationships. The second one is rituals can aid us in moments of transitions. Philip already kind of started speaking into that, but life confronts us with change and with major life events. And sometimes a moment of transition just means that, you're passing on a role from one member to the other, or there's a natural moment of transition like a new year. And other times, we're confronted with death, whether this is of a person or of a project, and vice versa with life, new life, birth of a project, birth of a human. And it can be very powerful. Like these life events, these major moments often bring a lot of emotions with them, and may require an intentional space, like a ritual, to really hold them, to process them, to walk through all these things together. And this, I think, already connects to the third big piece of why ritual is important in community building and communal living and being. And that is that ritual, because of its kind of nature of being an intentional space of presence and maybe even sacredness, it connects us to something larger than ourselves. And we know that this is important for individuals, and it's just as important for a group, because if we continue kind of just orbiting in our own microcosmos, it's so easy to get kind of stuck in drama, thrown into stories, to hold on to our projections, and we lose this ability to kind of, look from above, for example, to look from a different perspective. And ritual spaces can just be really, really helpful in this. Yeah, and with this first bit of introduction, we want to give you 2 reflection questions, because we don't just care about, teaching you something frontal, but we really want to invite you into this experience and reflect. And the first thing is, so where are you practicing ritual already today? Maybe you didn't even notice it was a ritual. Maybe you very intentionally have a ritualistic practice. And then the other one is, what rituals do you know of? And do they resonate? Do they not resonate? And why is that? That just as a starting point. And you'll see us for more of a deep dive in the next video.